Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today, perhaps because it's Veterans Day week, I've got a true American hero, a former Green Beret who served our country with distinction, but has also been an American hero here in his civilian capacity on soil. I'm going to ask him about that to tell us a tale that will really move your heart of true heroism here in Louisiana. But he's probably best known as the owner of Apocalypse Sports. He and his wife Felicia have built one of the biggest and best gun sellers in the whole country. And now they've added all this fun stuff like a shooting range, a restaurant. I'm sure you've seen it when you come in off of I-55. It's just a great business. So, with no further ado, Josh Burns, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, Josh, it's a real honor to have you here. And I do want to say thank you for your service. I'm a little late on Veterans Day, but to you and all the veterans who may be out there watching or listening, I want to say thank you for your service, your sacrifice, all y'all have done for our country. Why don't we kick things off today with you just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, not a problem. Grew up in Montana, actually, before Yellowstone was a thing. Born and raised in Columbia Falls, Montana, a little town in northwest Montana. Grew up hunting, fishing, and honestly just didn't realize how good I had it until I kind of moved away. My dad and stepmom trained and sold Arabian horses, did the whole horse farm thing. It's not nearly as cool as they want to make it on TV. I can tell you that.
It's not like Rip and Beth in real life.
And it is a lot more work than they ever show. It is.
I bet. Well, my dad, when I grew up, my dad, he's always been an avid hunter, but he would take an annual trip with his good friend Bruce Harold to Montana. He had some family up there, and he loves to tell the story. The first time he went, he as you know, around here, there's trees in every direction. There are no great wide open spaces, but they would go at the end of the day when they were done and look for, like, I don't know whether you call them herds of antelope or whatnot, but in the far distance, antelope, deer, whatever, and they would take shots at them from forever and see who could kick up the cloud of dust closest to it. And of course, you've worked with real snipers in life, so you guys were probably plugging them. But Dad lucked in on his first shot ever. He plugged one from like 7/10 of a mile or some ridiculous. But we always said, Dad, if you had just stopped hunting then and come back to Louisiana, you would be a legend in Montana, But so you grew up on the flip side of that, up there, wide open, blue sky country, and now you're down here in swampy South Louisiana. What do you notice as the big difference? I mean, what hits you first when you move from there to here? Is it the weather, the culture, or what? But like, what's that like coming from such a different place here in the Ponchatoula, Louisiana?
I mean, everywhere you move, you get it takes a while to get acclimated, but just the humidity is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I mean, advantage of, being in the military. I lived in South America for 9 months, Middle East for a couple of years, all over the place. I was stationed in Germany for a couple of years. So I've had the experience to see a couple of different climates, but then down here, when I got out in almost 2011, I took a job at Stennis Space Center basically I was a civilian instructor for the Navy Special Operations out there. So everything was outside teaching, small arms tactics, reactive contact, stuff like that. So you're walking through the woods in midsummer, July, August down.
Yikes.
Boy, and a ginger at that, just the sun's beating on it. The first summer down here was interesting, and
I bet.
I compare it to like the heat, when in the Middle East, it gets 120 up there, but it's a dry heat.
Yeah.
Heat down here is breathing mud.
Yeah, I recall the first time I went to Arizona and experienced that triple-digit dry heat, I was shocked that you could walk down the road and not even really be sweating, as compared to here, where if it's like 82, you're getting wet. I assume it was your beautiful bride that brought you here to that job at Stennis, or were you here already and then met her?
Yes. I took the job late 2010, met her shortly after that. I originally lived in Diamond Head, actually, before I moved to Ponchatoula.
Okay.
And then when we met, she was working in Baton Rouge at the time. I was working Stennis Space Center, and then she lived in Ponchatoula, so that was kind of the halfway mark between the two. So it seemed like the right thing to do. I moved in there, and then as soon as we moved in, she got a job at the Hammond Airport, and I was still driving an hour every day there, and then an hour back. So I got
I've noticed that when there's that commuting disparity, it can cause some bitterness. My wife used to commute a half hour to work in the Livingston school system and did that for probably close to a decade. And when I got my current law office, I moved approximately 2 blocks. And I bribed to her that my commute was up like 50% because it went from whatever, 4 blocks to 6. She didn't find that very amusing. So I bet you could relate. But let's circle back to the hard scrabble, outdoor life of Montana, working with horses as you described, that being such tough work. What did you take away from that? What lessons did you learn growing up, in that kind of equestrian, Montana farm life? What did you take away from that?
I guess the two biggest things is just hard work. When you grew up doing it, you just didn't realize how many people don't do it. I guess is the one thing, and then the
Yeah.
work ethic. Everybody that does that kind of work has a work ethic. You're gonna bale hay every summer. It's gonna suck, and you're just gonna do it. Always fences to be repaired. There's always something to do. And my summer job in high school was, I was doing concrete work, foundation work at 13, 14 years old, and I just kind of grew up always working. So kind of in life, anything I have now, it's like, oh, I can YouTube or Google that, and I'm pretty sure I can tackle that myself. I've got some pinches doing that, but
Yeah.
90% of the time,
Well,
work it out.
I admire you because I don't have that skill set. I grew up working at Hi-Ho where I could eat cheeseburgers in the AC and get paid at the same time.
Yeah.
And I can tell you get a kick out of this possibly. My dad has always been a real cowboy on the side. Of course, he was sheriff for 24 years and a law enforcement guy, a wildlife agent, you name it. But he had a 50 to say 75 head beef cattle operation, a farm out in La Ranja, and he could never interest any of his 4 boys in it. But I'll never forget the one year he really thought he had figured a smart way to get us involved. He gave us each a calf, and he was going to try to teach us the economics of raising beef and get us into it. And of course, we did really nothing to take care of our calf like we should have. The exact opposite of what it sounds like you did growing up. But when it came time to bring the calves to market, I don't remember what, maybe they were $500 a cow or something. But I remember my brother Bree bought a rifle and a scope. My brother Louie brought a Nintendo, and I bought some gear for my truck. Nobody reinvested the money in 2 calves the next year like we should have. And Dad got no help mending fences or taking care. So I always admired him. He did that till he was probably 75, maybe closer to 80 years old, but it was largely a solo act. So I
Yeah.
know a little bit about the hard work of which you speak, but only from watching Dad do it, not doing it myself. But so folks, we're here with Josh Burns, the owner of Apocalypse Sports, talking about his childhood in Montana. If you don't mind, Josh, tell us about the next chapter. You did serve your country. You mentioned how that brought you all around the world. How did you come to enlist in the Marines, and tell us about that journey, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So join the Army, not the Marines.
Army, I'm sorry. My apologies. Whoa. I'm really my apologies. That's right. Okay. Yeah, please
No,
proceed.
little bit of giving each other a hard time there. We definitely give our local brethren some issues. Long story short, man, I went to school and just I wasn't mature enough at the time. I had a small track scholarship, thought I was an athlete. Went to my first D1 track meet, realized I was not nearly as good as I thought I was. Was very humbling and what I needed at the time. Came back home and I started working in Montana. It's beautiful, but what they don't tell is there's hardly anything to do income wise. If you're not a firefighter in the summer and a ski bum in the winter, it's kind of, jobs are very seasonal and it's, tourist is the main attraction up there. So I started working at the same lumber mill that my dad had worked at for a long, long time. And I was flipping boards and my job was to inspect boards on a chain. They would come down and just make sure that they were correct. And I'd pull the bad ones. And I would do that for a 10-hour shift standing, and there was a digital clock right there in front of me. And I did it for about a month, and I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. So I went down the recruiter, and I was like, what do you got? And just being an outdoorsman and kind of an athlete, I wanted to do something into the special operations. So joined up. I went, was initially stationed in Germany at a long-range surveillance company, a LURS company, airborne. That was great. And being in a foreign country at 21 years old was early 20s anyways was different. uh,
I bet.
was very eye opening, just being able to experience another culture, which I'm glad I got to do, but was just a very very good thing for me at the time. But at the same
Right.
time, traveled way more and partied a little less maybe. But the the Irish pubs there were very good. I love a good Hefeweizen beer, so no regrets on that. I just wish I would have seen a little bit more. We did, and I was with a good group, so we did travel quite,
Right.
but I wish we would have traveled a little bit more. But
You know,
overall,
I spent a summer basically working as a camp counselor in Austria and Switzerland up in the Alps. And although it was probably much cozier and easier than serving in the military, I had the same recollection. It's like, man, wow, I wish I'd have gotten out and seen more. But all we wanted to do was hit beer gardens and pubs and drink our way through Europe. So I think we share some of the same regrets, perhaps. But that's interesting. So similar question to what I asked you about, growing up on a farm, working with horses. What were the big lessons you learned in the army?
I guess the biggest thing is being young and immature. To be honest, at the end of my early 20s, even is just at the time it was great for me to be told where to be, what to do, what to wear, and what time to be there. And if you didn't, you got punished, and you got punished hard. So was great for me at a young man's level, and just started to understand how to work with a team, understand discipline, understand that shit, man, life's not fair. Sometimes you're just going to get stuck with the raw end of the deal, and you just got to work through it. And as problems come to you, they're just puzzles. How can you fix it, and how can you move forward with it? There's nothing you can dwell on in the past. We just got to work it out and move forward. And that's kind of always something I've always learned in the military, and just always taken forward is just, hey, how can we tackle this problem? There's always a way. And that's, one thing, especially as I moved into the Green Beret training, like that is one thing you don't realize it, but they always give you these tasks that are like daunting and seem impossible, but there's always a way to accomplish it. And, I've been ingrained in me to do that moving forward in life. And so there's a lot of issues and times where you may not be able to or want to be able to do something, but there's always a way. And that's kind of just always stuck with me from that training.
So you mentioned the famed Green Beret training. I mean, one of the most elite forces, if not the most elite force on earth. We've all watched movies about it, and heard songs, and it's got this big giant role in American folklore. But what should we Americans that don't have the opportunity to serve and see it up close know about the Green Berets?
Man, I guess the biggest thing is, there's a big misconception of what a Green Beret is. Don't get me wrong, we are, a tier one force by all means, and the training is immaculate, but, we're masters of the basics. When I made it through my year of training, because when you start training, it kind of depends on your MOS, your language, what path you're going to go down, how long you're going to be in the Q course for. So you go to selection, and you do these tasks, and a lot of it is individual, but it's all team week and how you work with the team, how you're doing under stress, sleep deprived, stuff like that. And then as you go through, once you get selected, you go through phase two, your MOS phase, which is assigning you, hey, like I was an engineer, so I learned about explosives and how to build things, but it was more the structural integrity of something like, hey, if I wanted to take out a bridge, these were the supports I would use, or how do you take out train tracks if you want to disrupt something. But, it wasn't always door kicking. We're a force multiplier. We are bread and butter as we go in, and we either support the guerrilla force that is trying to overthrow the current government, and we use them as a force multiplier. So training is that's our biggest thing is we train. We take them, we're a force multiplier, we train that group, we're pro-government or against the government, and we try to sharpen the tool and use it how we want if we can.
It sounds like you guys are very creative problem solvers. I mean, obviously, people think of you like say kicking in the door, the kind of badass, tough aspect of the Green Beret. But maybe we don't realize as much y'all working that muscle between your ears, because when you're talking about how to approach these things, whether it's taking out a bridge or taking out a government, whatever, these are very intellectual pursuits, I think. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why I kind of give you a hard time about the whole Marine thing is, as a Marine, you're basically told, hey, that floor is white, even if it's a black floor. Like you're like, okay, it's white. Like you don't have a choice. As a Green Beret, you have that left and right lateral limit to where like, hey, we're going to drop you off in the woods, and you're just going to make it happen. And so, a lot of times you've got to just, like you said, think outside the box. So obviously, there's definitely some intelligence that has to go into that, and problem solving back to that, and just thought process.
Right.
Sure you're doing your due diligence. And just back again, I always kind of relate it to it when I'm training the guys. It's all back to the principles. Everything we do. I really thought once I was going to graduate the Q course and don my Green Beret, I'm like, okay, there's some secret special operations where I'm going to learn all these cool tactics. And all we did was train every day, basics. And it was like, I had a team sergeant that used to say, you don't do it till you get it right. You do it till you can't get it wrong. And
that's a great way to put it. And that's a saying and a lesson that will serve you well, whatever you do, whether you're selling guns and running a shooting range, whether you're practicing law, whatever. That kind of preparation is critical. You mentioned thinking outside the box and solving problems. And I want to share here on our screen a story that you'll be quite familiar with because you lived it. Green Beret saves woman and a 4-year-old from a submerged dump truck. And as you can see, if you look here, that's the top of the submerged dump truck, and we're talking about the water. Tell us about how this happened, because spoiler alert, everybody, Josh is the Green Beret they're talking about in this story. Would you mind sharing with us what happened on that fateful day?
Yeah, not a problem. Long story short, we were actually my wife and I were headed down to New Orleans. I've had 4 or 5 back surgeries because weak genetics is what I call it, but the military was a little bit hard on me, so I used to get spinal injections down in New Orleans, and I always have to have a driver, obviously, to bring me back home. And as we were going down to one, my wife and I were driving down there, and we noticed a large sum of people kind of gathering around. I didn't actually witness the accident as we were going across the spillway. So I pulled over, and I just had a bad feeling that someone had gone over. And as I looked over the edge, got out of the vehicle, walked over, and looked over, I just in time for the man that was driving it had come up out of the water. And he could barely swim, and he was yelling that his family was in there.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. It was just more of a reaction at that point. I just started taking off my shirt. I gave my phone and wallet to my wife, and I was like, hey, take the truck, meet me down on the low road, because I honestly didn't know how long they had been in the water at that point. The cab, you can't really see it, but the cab's in front there, but it's completely submerged.
Yeah. Whoa.
Floating, but the whole cab's underwater at that point. And I just jumped off, and then, on the left side of the bridge, there was water. On the right side of the bridge was land. So when I jumped, I was just like, hoping for the best. I had no idea how deep it was, but I was like, man, I've jumped out of a lot of planes in my life. I can just hopefully do a parachute landing fall, hope for the best. And, at a minimum, I thought I could at least save them if I had broke my leg or something. But when I hit that water, nothing happened. It was kind of a blessing. Then I remember I was on a dive team there for a bit, and I give the old team captain a hard time because he used to love, I say beating us in the pool, but essentially training us. And you can't touch the gunnel or the side of the pool as you're exhausted and whatnot. And I just remember at some point swimming and looking up at him just smiling because we were hating life and he was enjoying it. And I was like, I'm never going to use these techniques. And sure shit, as I'm swimming to this truck, I'm like, that son of a bitch.
Wow.
So I ended up swimming over there, trying to keep my heart rate as low as possible. As soon as I got there, I started diving down. Couldn't really find the door initially at first. Was able to finally find the door and jerked on it. I don't know if the frame twisted or if the doors had locked from driving, but I couldn't get the door open. It was locked. So I dove down like 3 or 4 times, trying to hold my breath as long as possible to getting it open and whatnot. One time when I came up, someone had lowered from up top above the bridge, had lowered a hammer and a crowbar. So I used that hammer to break out one of the windows, and sure enough, I was actually able to fill the woman in there. So I broke out the window the rest of the way and kind of cut out my hands and arms a little bit, but then reached in there and I was able to grab her. And when I grabbed her and pulled her out and brought her to the surface, she had, thank God, was holding her 4-year-old as well. So we were able to pull them both out at the same time.
Wow. This is by far and away in 150 plus episodes of this show. This is the most wild story, the most inspirational story, the most heroic story that we've heard. Wow. folks, when I introduce Josh as an American hero, we just think the words Green Beret is all it takes. And of course, anybody who has that distinction deserves it. But wow, to think that all that training would pay off in the least expected way possible, man, that just screams out to me as a God thing, that God put you through that training so that you could save this family. Any idea what the then 4-year-old little girl's up to now, or she and her mom? Do y'all stay in touch? How's
Yeah,
that work?
it had been about 6 or 7 years, and we actually linked up just last summer. Went and had the 4-year-old is obviously now, man, I was 13, I think now.
Yeah.
All she said, and I got to have dinner with him and her, and then her husband and everything. So it was great. I met the whole family. Her whole family came down, and
Wow.
emotional for everybody, but it was a really good seeing. But yeah, and we chat every once in a while, so it's good to see.
What a blessing. And what about your wife? I mean, you talk to her later because she's got to be sitting there thinking. I mean, you guys, like you mentioned, you're going down. You had 4 or 5 back surgeries. You're more aware of than anybody that broken leg is maybe best case scenario if you hit something. Paralysis is very much in play, and which could lead to death in that scenario. What did she have to say after all of this? Because she's sitting there watching, and what were her thoughts?
Really, I don't think much either. I know she was just trying to help me because, once I told her to go down to the low road, meet me on the low road, because we honestly, at the point when I told her, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to be dragging out of the vehicle. I need to be doing CPR on these people, so I'm like, I need you to meet me down at the low road so you can help me because I don't know how many people are in there, etc. So she started waving as she went across. Another guy with a boat had kind of asked what was going on, and she followed me to the low road. So when I had swam the young man, the 4-year-old, to shore, I just in time as I was coming up out of the water, my wife was coming to the shore. So it was kind of perfect timing. I handed the baby off to her, and then I went back and grabbed the wife, swam her back. And then the gentleman, he swam back with a life jacket, and he had steel-toed boots on, which I was like, just take them off and hand them to me and I'll swim them back. So just like I said, kind of a weird thing when I was side swimming with the baby, or the 4-year-old hip, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to call my old captain and tell him that.
What did he say when you did call? Boy, he had to be proud, huh?
Yeah, he just said, yeah, well, I told you. I was like, he's got such a dry humor. I was like, yeah,
Matter of fact, huh?
yeah.
Well, you and your wife, a heroic duet. So tell us about that. If you don't mind, you mentioned when you met your wife and kind of how y'all hooked up, but tell us about Felicia. Why'd you fall in love with her? And it seems like y'all have such a great partnership, not just in your business, but in life. If you don't mind, share a little bit of your love story with us.
Yeah, so I met Felicia, who's also a veteran. She's been in the Air Force. She did 20, I think 4 or 23. Don't quote me on that, but and then she was unfortunately forced out during COVID because she wouldn't take the shot, so she got forced retired.
Oh, goodness, no. Oh, man. Tragic.
Kind of bittersweet. We were talking about her retiring from there, anyways, but
Yeah.
and now she works at Customs Border Protection there in Hammond. So great job there. She loves it there. And then when I met her at the time, she had 2 kids, my step son, or Jonathan and Emily, and I had my son. So it just seemed, family oriented. At that point in my life, I'd been around the world, and it was kind of just in my mind time to settle down. And especially, I had just had my first back surgery at 28, and I was like, okay, probably keep on jumping out of planes and doing the back up and down the mountains anymore, is it? So it would just seemed like time, and met my Southern Belle, and that was it.
Well, what a great thing that y'all did come together, and I appreciate you sharing that. I think the world of her. When we were chatting off camera, I remember, and in just a moment, we're going to get into apocalypse sports and talk about the giant success story that your business has been. But it's this thing that you guys started up in your home before you even had the other store. And I remember Will buying a little pistol, and Felicia processed the sale for me right there at your kitchen table. And so to see y'all come from that to where you are now is really inspirational. And to know that such a good thing happened, such success occurred for 2 such good people, literally 2 American heroes that served us domestically and abroad in so many ways. It's really, I mean, you guys have quite the tearjerker, man. I mean, it's quite a story. So if you don't mind, let's dig into your business, because I think
Yeah.
many people are probably watching this hoping that they're going to hear about this beautiful building that's popped up on the side of I-55, whether they're folks like me that have bought gums from you at your old store in your old house or whatever, to now, or whether they've never heard of you. If you wouldn't mind, tell us about Apocalypse Sports.
Yeah, not a problem. So 2013, we started Apocalypse Sports. Long story short, it was kind of around the Sandy Hook time when it was very hard to get any kind of gun parts. And I would, just out of my own hobby, I used to build ARs just kind of for my own good. And then everybody I knew at the time was like, "Hey, would you build me one?" So my wife,
Mhm.
when thank goodness, she's a lot smarter on the paperwork side. She applied and got our FFL, and wanted to make sure we were doing everything right. And then I was like, you know what? Why don't we start doing some gun shows? Because the thing she reminds me of all the time is I was like, if I could just make like an extra $50 a month or so, I can use my mind. I was going to buy more guns with it, and I'm sure
Well, yeah, yeah.
another.
Support your own habit, but boy, have y'all blown past that. That's exciting.
Yeah, but we definitely have sat across our kitchen table with many a people, and we transferred and sold so many guns out of the house and at gun shows for many years. 2017, we moved into our first brick and mortar there at the old, used to be the PQ Lumber Company back in the day, or hardware store actually. And 2017, we moved in there. Then 2024, we moved in here. But a lot of people see the success, but I tell you, it's been a long road.
We don't see the work. I heard that possibly you're working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, just around the clock.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
did you go ahead? I'm sorry. Please proceed.
Right now, the owner, for some reason, I don't know why, in all my wisdom, we're open 7 days a week, 10 hours a day now. But you're here after, and until we get people trained, we went from 7 employees to 27 right now. So it's
Oh, wow.
herding cats, and definitely scaling has some headaches. But what
Well,
you
I hope that you haven't been in the new store to see the 27 employees, but I know at the old shop, you have really distinguished yourself with having quality employees. I go in there and I see my buddies John and Ed and all these guys that I came up with. They serve the country through the military like you, or law enforcement, just really good people, and also, really knowledgeable about the type of weaponry you sell. How do you go about that process? What's your hiring philosophy, and how have you found the folks that you have?
That was one of the biggest things. Is I went to a local gun shop before I had opened mine, and I told the guy what I want, and he basically tried to talk me out of it, just because, of course, I didn't have it in stock, and they wanted to sell me what was in stock, and I was just like, I had such a bad taste in my mouth leaving, and I was like, I'll never be that shop. I want to sell you a gun, of course, but I want to have a conversation with you, figure out what you want, and point you in the right direction. And if you want my opinion, I'll give it, but I always tell my guys, keep your opinion out of it, because like I'm a Glock guy, John's a SIG guy, Ed's more of a 1911 guy. We all have our preferences, but that may not be your preference. And I think we've preached that from day one. And then, just like you said, is keeping good people here. And if they're not a good fit, you got to let them go and get the right people back in.
Yeah, in my law firm, I've learned, the hard way, that the most important thing is getting the right people in the building. Some people say get the right people on the bus before you figure out what seat they need to sit in, because you can figure out that second part later. But if they don't come with the requisite character and work ethic and attitude, it's going to make it hell for everybody. So I
And
admire that you've done so well. Those are great guys, and I've been around them my whole life, and I look up to them. They've always kind of looked out for me like big brothers around town. Even if only one of them is truly the big guy of the
yeah,
two we're talking about. But if you don't mind, I want to bring this up and talk about the range that you have here, because this is super exciting. You always had a great store. Now it's clearly much bigger, and I'm sure you have more inventory, and to go with those 27 people. But to have this range right here in Ponchatoula is unprecedented. So would you mind telling us about how the range works? And you see here range pass. What's the deal with it? Would you mind sharing that?
yeah, not a problem. We have one of the largest gun selections in the South Louisiana.
Mhm.
At any given time, there's over 4,000 guns in the store. And then
Wow.
with that, the whole facility is 22,000 square feet, and we have two bays of 7. lanes. So right there, you see one bay of 7, and they're either military themed or I've got a Louisiana themed bay, and I think that's the Louisiana. Looks like I got the crawfish on the wall and the gator.
Yeah.
Um, we've got a 25-yard lane, 25 yards. You can shoot rifle or pistol up to 300 Win Mag in here. So if you want to at least get your hunting rifle on paper at 25 yards, you can do it here. Or if you just want to come shoot your pistol. The target runners are all, everything's state of the art. So target runners are cordless. It's like an iPad. You tap on the screen, your distance. You can program.
That's neat.
There. We had a zombie night or like a target night where we turned off lights and it's like the red, blue, and the zombie targets on there. So we offer, like you said, we offer the monthly subscription or the annual plan. So if you're interested in coming and shoot, or if you just want to come down for an hourly rate, $2 an hour, and you can just come shoot whenever you want.
Yeah. That's exciting. And speaking of other new amenities, you've got a restaurant in the building, right? And it's run by our beloved former guest of the show, Trevor, right? And Trevor Bordelon. Bullets, is it Bites and Bullets, Bullets and Bites? Tell us about the restaurant.
Yes, sir. So when we were planning this, talked to Trevor. He's a good friend of mine, and
yeah, great guy.
We'd really planned on wanting to do something different. And, one thing you can't really see in there is we have an observation room where you can look into the range while people are shooting. It's 2-inch bulletproof glass, so there's no sound or go wrong. But we put a bunch of tables in there, and me and him were talking. I was like, man, I really want to bring food in here and drinks and coffee and stuff like that. So me and him started talking, and sure enough, so he's got Bites and Bullets in there. They pizzas, wraps, energy drinks, coffee, anything you need. So I call it like the Top Golf of shooting ranges. So you can come get a bite, observe if you want, don't want to shoot, shoot, and then come back and get a bite.
Great concept. Well, how do these ideas pop up? So, I mean, is this something that you and your wife just collaborate on, or other guys in the shop? I mean, where did the vision for such a big move come? Because obviously, y'all had a ton of success at the old place.
Mm-hmm.
Probably way, way more success than anybody ever realized. I remember John and Ed telling me about how many guns y'all were selling online. It was always incredible to hear about the success you had as you grew your business. But when you're talking about neat things like zombie nights and Bites and Bullets and Top Golf / shooting range, what's the genesis of that?
Yeah, I think just two things is, one, we're very successful because I worked full time until literally 2 years ago. So we had a gun shop, but I would work full time and do the gun shop. So everything in the shop we put right back into it, and that's why we have such good inventory. And then moving forward, when
because you only wanted what, $50 to $100 a month or something extra, so you didn't need to draw a huge salary, right?
Yeah, and honestly, for the first 8 years, my wife or I didn't even pay ourselves while we worked.
Wow.
So 2022 was the first year I took a paycheck.
That's amazing.
After 8 years, it was time to, and even then, to this day, I only take $50,000 a year. So it just, I want to, at some point, it's going to pay me very well. We're just not there yet. I still want to build the ideas I have, and that's where all the money's going to. So
that's an incredible amount of patience. And, but it's a testament to young people out there who seem to want things just to happen overnight, that, if you want to have something big and beautiful and bold like you do now, you can't get there if you're constantly pulling cash out to buy the latest shoes or newest car or whatever. That's an impressive business lesson.
And this idea really came from, Hurricane Ida. Hurricane Ida hit us. And I don't know if you know our old buildings, an old 2-story building, but it got about a 3-inch lean or rack to it. And
I did not know that. Whoa.
We were very unsure if we were ever going to be able to use it. So my wife's a realtor, and all her spare time, we used to flip houses on the side. So I asked her to get a real estate license. So if she didn't have jobs, aside from helping with the gun shop, being in the military and working at custom, she went and got her real estate license. And I was like, hey, we need to start looking for a commercial place. Doesn't look like we're going to be able to use this shop, but there was just nothing out there that fit us.
Right.
And we really wanted.
And if you love Ponchatoula like you and I do, we know that it's a small community, and there are not that many commercial. There's very little undeveloped property left, and there are not that many truly commercial spaces. There's a bunch of people like me, maybe putting a business in an old house, but that won't work for a shooting range, right?
Yeah. So we looked high and low, and it didn't work. So she found us a piece of property, which is where we're currently at, and we just started designing it. And I admittedly, I designed everything myself, but I also drove to pretty much every range within 4 to 6 hours of here and was just like, hey, that's a good idea. Nah, I don't like that idea. And, I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm just kind of making things work. And then here it is. It all worked out good and it came out
Yeah.
great. I got to give a small shout out to Jason Dunnington, D&H Quality Construction. He's our contractor. He picked up this range running, and I mean, he knocked it out of the park. Him and his guys.
Yeah. Amen to that. And you mentioned all the research, visiting other ranges for a guy who loves to do this anyway. I'm sure that's kind of fun R&D, right? You get to go do
Like
what you love and call it research. That's
a
cool.
small trip to Houston or Austin, see some of the ranges out there.
Yeah,
A 48-hour getaway kind of for work. So,
right. Well, you clearly love what you do.
mhm.
I'm sure you don't always love your job, because when you're doing something 7 days a week and the hours are tremendous, everyone who's done that before knows it puts a strain on the rest of your life. But tell us, why have you chosen this path? What is it that you love so much about this, and what gets you up each morning ready to come back and fight at it again 7 days a week?
Yeah, I think just two things. We go back to the guys we have here are amazing guys and gals. I mean, they are an amazing team. And admittedly, it's a 12-hour day, but I come here early so I can shoot a little bit. Gym, pop a few rounds off. So that's kind of my uh, sanity saver at the moment.
I like that, well, that phrase there, sanity saver. I'm going to have to write that one down and copy you on it. Let me ask you this, Josh. Clearly, you've had a lot of success in life on multiple fronts, and I really appreciate your candor about your youth and kind of what it took to get here. Let's talk about lessons you learned along the way. If some version of you, it doesn't have to be from the fields of Montana raising horses, but some young, highly capable guy like yourself who maybe hasn't yet figured it out the way you have, were to come to you for advice, and you look back now, at your age, all these decades later, from when you joined the Army and became a Green Beret, what lessons spring to mind that you might want to share with that young person?
Yeah, I think it comes back to the training, man. It really is. I know people say it all the time is you can accomplish anything, but not even so much that is I see a ton of people get so frustrated with issues and just give up. And it's like,
Yeah, good point.
I can't tell you how many times I was told, hey, no, you're not going to get that permit to build this building, or hey, you're not going to get that. There's no, admittedly, we bought this lot and there was no sewer or water over here, even though it was a city lot. And it was just like we were running into, hey, you're
Wow.
not putting water over there. And it's just like,
Oh, or how about this one? Hey, the door to that submerged truck is locked. Good try. You did your best. I mean, that little girl and her mom wouldn't be here today, right? So, yeah, the persistence you're talking about is really life altering.
yeah, there's just always a way. It's a puzzle, and you just got to find the right avenue. You're going to get knocked down 14, 15, 34 times. It's just you get back up until you get it right. And I mean,
Yeah,
it may suck for a long time, but it's going to get better. It really
right.
is.
Well, I promise you I'd get you out of here in a reasonable hour, and I'm probably already over my allotment of what I told you this would take. So I'm close to bringing things to an end here. But before I do, is there anything I have not asked you about with relation to Apocalypse Sports that you want to share with our viewers or our listeners about the services you provide, the equipment you sell, guns, ammo, tactical, you name it, range experience, food? We've covered a lot of bases, but what have we missed that you want to share with our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of training here too. So if you're wanting to learn some basic pistol classes, we've got one coming up December 8th, I believe. There's only 13 slots left. I do all the training myself. Obviously, I've got about 20 years special operations experience in teaching. So that, and then range memberships, be looking out for Black Friday sales coming up. And if you guys have any questions, just come and have lunch and just see the place, you know.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you especially for taking the time to be with us here today. Knowing how many hours you work and how hard you are, at it to get your business up and running with this big move. I kind of doubly appreciate you setting time aside to share your story with our community. Again, as I said at the outset, you are a true American hero, and Ponchatoula is so lucky to have you here. Before we go, is there anything else on your mind, on your heart, anything at all you want to share with folks before we say goodbye?
No, I think everything's been said. Again, just being Veterans Week, I want to say thank all of my veterans. And again, we've always said it. You don't need a day to get a discount here if you're a veteran or former police officer or current police officer. Come in, we'll work with you anytime. We don't have one day set aside. You'll always get a discount here. So,
Amen to that. I love that. As the brother and son of two police officers or sheriffs, that's a big deal, and I know that the veterans and police community out there appreciate it. So there you have it, folks. One of America's finest, and certainly one of Ponchatoula's finest, Josh Burns of Apocalypse Sport, has been with us here. I thank everyone for listening or watching, and we'll be back with you next time. Y'all take care.